Hi, it's Andy again. Another video for you today. And this week we've been talking about conflict that comes and that will come in the midst of trying to move back. And I know that even right now, today, Wednesday, May the 6th, 2020, we're at day like 52 since our church has met. And the intention is to meet this Sunday, which would be day 56. And that's a long time not to meet. However, I know that even today, their concern is ramping up over meeting again. And of course, I said a week or two ago that this step was necessary. This idea of moving forward and beginning to reopen the economy a little bit, to reopen the states, to relax the shelter in place a little bit. This was a necessary test. It was a necessary idea to begin to see what would happen. And of course, we can be smart about that, right? I mean, most everybody has still gone out, and we've still gone to the store. We've still gone to, to get different supplies that we needed to take care of ourselves and to eat and those kinds of things. So, but now that we begin to gather a little bit more, we still need to be smart. So, again, I do believe this is a necessary step, but conflict will continue to grow as we determine what is next. And we know that the count for the prospective death totals have increased in all this. That's just going to escalate the conflict. So yesterday I talked about a couple of different ideas of resolving conflict. I talked about the idea of the 5 Ds, which you can go back and look at the video. And then I also talked about the space acrostic that can be used for that, and that comes from Michael Hyatt. And I really think that latter one helps us to really focus on what I want to focus on today. Again, space is stop, and then probe. So we stop and we kind of just check ourselves. If somebody comes and approaches us, we just kind of check our own heart. We check our own motives in that moment. We just stop for just a second, and then we begin to probe and ask questions. Make sure that what they are saying is what we are hearing. Make sure that what we're saying is what they're hearing. Reflective listening skill on that. Then begin to acknowledge. Okay, I see that this is the issue. Then we begin to confess, and finally we explain ourselves, not in a harsh way. But I think if we look at the space idea, we see ultimately one of the ideas that God would promote for conflict resolution, and that is love. So again, conflict's going to happen, but how we respond, do we respond harshly, or do we respond in love? By responding in love, I don't mean responding in agreement. Okay, we might still have disagreements. Again, remember conflict from yesterday. 3 reasons for it: a misunderstanding, a different understanding, or a lack of understanding. We are still going to have differences in understanding, and we can still love through that. We don't have to agree on everything to be united. This was a big point of Paul in 1 Corinthians 1, where he says that he wanted them to be united with one mind. Even though that they had differences of opinion on things, they were following even different religious leaders, different apostles, even at that time. So, with that idea, we can disagree, and we can still love, and that would be the way that God would want us to respond to conflict, especially as a body. So think about this. One of the main metaphors that the Bible uses for the people who belong to God is the body of Christ. And so, Paul talks about, can the eye say, I don't need you, etc. Well, that would create a lot of conflict. So let's just say for a moment my thumb hurt. And if my thumb hurt, that's going to affect my entire hand. It's going to limit what I can grab. It's going to limit what I can pick up. It's going to limit how I carry things. But what if my left bicep got mad at my right thumb and said, well, we don't need you. I'm in disagreement that you should not be hurting. And think about the absurdity of this. My left bicep saying to my right thumb, we don't need you anymore. Get out of here. We're in disagreement. That's absurd because the bicep can't talk, right? And a bicep wouldn't think that about the thumb. But isn't that what we do in the church? Hey, you're different from me. You don't agree with the same things that I agree with. You don't think in the same way that I think. So just why don't you get out of here and let me do church the way I want to do church. Well, first off, it's not your church. It's not my church either. It's Jesus' church. And so instead of the bicep talking to the thumb and saying, hey, we don't need you, the bicep should say to the thumb, hey, you know what? I'm going to strengthen the left hand. I'm going to do my part on the left side of the body so that the left hand can do its work. And if we have to carry more on this side, I'll do that. Paul writes about this in Galatians 6, where he says, bear one another's burdens. That's love. So in that case, the left bicep is saying to the right thumb, in some weird way in my mind as it's working, hey, you know what? I realize that you've got some pain right now. I realize that you can't, the right bicep is fine, but because the hand is dysfunctional at the moment, we're going to take on more of the load. We disagree about some things, but we're just going to take on more of the load so that you can have time to heal. And again, that's where the idea of having space, taking that space, is stopping and probing and acknowledging and confessing and explaining ourselves step by step to help us to understand where the other person is coming from and taking on that love. It's a part of the fruit of the Spirit. We're going to talk more about this tonight during our Bible study and Q&A time. The fruit of the Spirit, which I'm going to take a different track tonight, but the first mention within the fruit is love. And when we have love, it's so much easier to have joy. It's easier to have peace. It's easier to have patience. It's easier to have all 9 aspects of that fruit. But so often when we have conflict, all we think about is ourselves. All we think about is our way. All we think about is our needs, our desires, our wants, our hopes, our fears. Us. It's all about us. But when we realize that love is not just about us, it's about others, as Paul wrote to the Philippians, consider others better than yourselves. We need to think about others as we consider ourselves. That is the true definition of humility. It is not thinking less of yourself. It is thinking of yourself less. And as we think of ourselves less, that means that we are beginning to think about others. And excuse me, as Paul is writing about that, he goes directly into what Jesus did. He certainly thought about himself. Even in the Garden of Gethsemane, he thought about himself. Take this cup from me. God, if there's any other way to make this happen, but not my will, yours be done, right? And then Paul goes from that in Philippians 2 into Philippians, at the end part of Philippians 2, he says, let me give you a couple of other examples. Timothy and Epaphroditus, they put you before they put themselves. They put their lives at risk to help you. And then Paul goes on into his own sacrifices that he has made in Philippians 3. So again, we can look at this and we can do this resolution of conflict by intensifying conflict. And that's going to happen. We're human. We're going to blame. We're going to get angry. We're going to do all those things. But if we just will take time to stop first and say, what is the bigger picture here? How can this move forward? We have a major obstacle in front of us. But if you've been a part of our church for a while, the one word that you've heard starting in the spring of 2016, we have constantly used the word opportunity. And wherever there's an obstacle, there is an opportunity. And we have great opportunities before us, but those obstacles will only get bigger if we allow the conflict to grow. The obstacles will become opportunities that can blossom into great opportunities for ministry if we allow love to shine forth. And again, that's what we're called to do. Let your light shine before men. Part of that light is from within. Jesus said in John 8:12, I am the light of the world. In Matthew 5:16, he says, you are the light of the world. We cannot be the light of the world if we do not have Jesus as the light of the world within us and shining through us. And as he shines through us, some of that love has to come forth, has to come out. And as that happens, again, great things can happen for God. Great things can happen for his church. Great things can happen within the kingdom. And that begins with you and I, even when we have conflict with one another. So are we going to have conflict as we move forward? I'm pretty sure we will, just because we have conflict with everything else. I'm not talking about whoever's listening to this, and watching this video and myself directly. That may happen. But again, as I mentioned the last couple of days, I'm going to make mistakes as we go through this process. but I hope I learn. And maybe a part of that conflict is you helping me to understand where I'm off and me helping you to understand where you're off so that we can grow together. But again, as we resolve that conflict, let's think about it not as in who's right, but as in how we can move forward. And again, that takes love. So I hope you'll join us tonight as we talk a little bit from a different perspective about the fruit of the Spirit and about some things that I'm learning during this time of this process. Tomorrow's video here will be about coming back together as a church beginning this week. And then Friday, I promised you for several days now that I'll be talking about what it means to be more, M-O-R-E. That'll be on Friday. So until then, I bid you farewell.